Dr. Chantrise Holliman.
That's correct.
How are you today? How are you feeling?
I am great. I actually feel pretty good today. A little tired.
Yeah.
But that's because it's just been a really busy past couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And I was hoping to get some rest today, but then you sent me a message and I said, never mind. Okay. I'm not going to rest today. I'm going to go over here. No,
All
I'm
right.
good.
Well, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. We wanted to kind of extend our conversation that you had on Morning Break with Tim. We want to give you an opportunity to share your full story.
Right.
So first, before we get started, tell me who Dr. Holliman is.
Oh, so you're going to give me that first question right off the bat. Okay. Who is Dr. Holliman? Well, first of all, Dr. Holliman is someone who is still getting used to being called Dr. Holliman. My father is the only person who calls me by my full government name, and he does that often. I prefer Chantrise, but I have learned over the past year or so, I had a wonderful black female professor who told me, she said, don't you ever be ashamed of using your full title. She said you earned it. And so I'm someone who prefers to be in the background. I don't particularly like being in the limelight, but here I am.
Yeah.
In the limelight. I'm a wife, I'm a mother to an amazing almost 27-year-old, which is still freaking me out, daughter. I have 3 bonus children. I'm also a yaya, so I have 2 adorable granddaughters. I am a pastor's wife. I am a author. I am a content creator. I am a really big kid in a 51-year-old body.
What do you mean by that? You know, why is it important for you to highlight that? Sorry.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
No, because I think that, you know, when you become an adult, right? I used to be a teacher. I used to tell my students, don't be in such a rush to become an adult. I said, because you're going to be an adult longer than you're going to be a kid. Enjoy not having all the responsibility. Enjoy having the fun. And one of the things that I learned about my own self-care is that I need to laugh. I need to do things that remind me of 8-year-old me. So I color. I watch cartoons. I'll even throw on Sesame Street every now and then because Sesame Street is just classic. And there's just things on there that, you know, that make you feel good. So I think it's important for me to remind myself that I may be 51, but I really don't ever want to lose my childlike wonder. I don't ever want to lose or be in awe of butterflies or things that, you know, that we consider to be childlike. Because I think that that's helpful for my mental health. It's also helpful for my spiritual and my physical health. So,
yeah.
Big old kid.
Yeah. So, you know, obviously it's American Heart Month.
Right.
You know, it is definitely something that most of this conversation will be about. But I want you to take me back to the beginning, March 23rd, 2018.
Yeah. So it's amazing. I never thought that I would be at this point in this journey where I could tell this story so effortlessly. Right. There were in the early years, I couldn't tell this story and just not, you know, completely melt down and cry. But it's amazing how time does heal. So March 23rd, 2018, I woke up. It wasn't time for me to wake up, but I woke up because I had this, I didn't feel well, right? So I felt a little pressure in my chest, figured it was gas. Like I often tell people, I had a cheesesteak the night before, shouldn't have had a cheesesteak. You know, I had I was a runner and I had been eating all of the good things, but I just had a craving. I said, I'm going to get a cheesesteak. I just want to, it wasn't that good. Like in hindsight, it wasn't like the best thing ever, but I woke up that morning and I was feeling the pressure in my chest and I said, okay, well, clearly this is gas. So I was going downstairs to the kitchen to get a Red Rock ginger ale. Now, I'm originally from Massachusetts. I didn't know what a Red Rock ginger ale was until I moved to Georgia. Mm-hmm. Now I know that Red Rock ginger ale is medicine. And so if anything is wrong with your stomach, you go and you drink a Red Rock. And so I went to the stairs, didn't quite make it to the stairs because I got immediately sick, immediately nauseous, immediately ill. I ran to the bathroom. I threw up violently, crawled back in the bed and just kind of laid there for a little while. And I said, okay, let me just catch my breath. Let me just rest for a minute. because in my head, I'm thinking, I have to go to work. I have things I have to do. I was a director of professional development for a set of charter schools. I had professional development to do. I had things I had to do. And I laid there, and my husband kind of looked at me, and he's like, you feeling okay? I was like, a little bit of chest pain, but I'm sure it's gas. No big deal. 5 minutes later, he came back and looked at me again, and he looked, and he said, and I don't know what made him ask this, but he said, do I need to call an ambulance? And I'm thinking to myself, that's a really odd question to ask, for I'm just laying here. And in my head, I'm like, no, but yes is what came out of my mouth. And I'm thankful because, the I am woman, hear me roar in me was going to work like I had always done, even when I didn't feel well. As women who work and who are mothers and wives, we put the world on our shoulders and we keep it pushing.
Yeah.
And so he said, do I need to call an ambulance? And I said, yes. So he called the ambulance. He helped me get downstairs. He got me on the sofa. I was still I didn't feel nauseous anymore, but I was still feeling the pressure in my chest. Paramedics came. Ma'am, what's going on? I said, well, I'm having some chest pain. I'm sure it's nothing. They took my blood pressure, and the paramedics immediately stopped talking to me and immediately started talking to my husband. They said, where do you want us to take her? And I'm like, hello, I'm still here.
Yeah.
And he said, well, let's go to Grady, which is, the #1 trauma hospital in Georgia. And the paramedic said, if we take her there, she won't make it. And I remember thinking, what do you mean I won't make it? And she said, well, ma'am, you're having a heart attack. And I was like, oh, well, then we should probably go someplace closer so I don't die. Ha, ha, ha. So, and if you have to know me to understand my sense of humor, like in my head, I'm thinking people have heart attacks all the time.
Yeah.
They survive. This is no big deal. I mean, it's a big deal, but it's not a big deal.
Right. Was any part of you scared?
No. Not even a little bit. I just figured this was, okay, well, we're going to go to the hospital. They're going to do something. It's going to be fine. Got into the ambulance. I remember seeing my husband looking very sort of disheveled and confused. He was getting in his car. I remember being in the ambulance. I remember hearing the sirens. I remember feeling the ambulance was moving really, really fast. And I was just like, okay. This is interesting because when I say that the only time before this moment that I had ever been in the hospital was when I gave birth to my daughter. I'd never been, anything really sick. So I'm in the ambulance. I'm like, okay, all right. We get to the hospital. The last thing I remember is them rushing me out of the ambulance, bringing me to the ER, hearing the nurse say her husband is standing outside. And me looking out the ER door before it closed and seeing my husband standing outside. And that's the last thing that I remember until I regained consciousness 7 days later.
So do you have any memory of your feeling in that moment of seeing your husband outside? Did you realize what was going on?
No, I really didn't. I think that's just such a good question because I don't think I was thinking anything. I was just like, okay, whatever this is, I'm at the hospital. They're going to fix it. And I'm gonna go to work on Monday, I've got to run a training run tomorrow. Like it wasn't. It didn't. It just never registered to me how serious this was. Because again, I get sick, but I don't get sick. Like I don't no sickness that was required me to go to the hospital or take anything more than a round of medication. I didn't know. And it literally was not until I regained consciousness that sort of the gravity of what I experienced set in. And I didn't even know that I had been in a coma for 7 days. When, my husband asked me, he said, do you know what happened? And I was like, no. He said, well, you had a heart attack. And I said, and my first response was, oh, okay, so when do I get to go home? Because I'm thinking, people have heart attacks all the time. Okay. And I'm thinking it's just been maybe a day, maybe. Yeah. Like I went to sleep, I woke up and here I am. And he's like, no, you're going to be here a little while longer. And I said, well, how long? I said, because I've got a training run on Monday. And he said, do you know what day it is? And I'm like, Saturday? He's like, no, it's been a week. Oh, huh. And then I realized I tried to, I was trying to roll over in the bed and I said, well, are you sure I had a heart attack? And he's like, absolutely. I said, well, I can't move my legs. So you sure it wasn't a stroke? He said, no, it was a heart attack. I said, well, why can't I move my legs? He's like, I don't know. We called the nurse in. The nurse said, oh, it's just your muscles may have atrophied because you've been in the coma for 7 days. But even in my conscious mind, I'm thinking, like my logic started kicking in. I was like, 7 days isn't long enough for my legs to atrophy. So what are you talking about? But I couldn't really formulate my questions and really get my brain and my mouth to work together. They had me on some really heavy duty medicine. That's when I found out that when people have heart attacks, they are given fentanyl. I did not know that. Fentanyl is one of the drugs that they gave me while I was in the hospital to help regulate whatever they had to regulate to help try to bring me back. So because as a result of the drugs they had me on, I was conscious, but I wasn't conscious, if that makes any sense. So because of the amount of drugs, I was having these really bizarre hallucinations and dreams when I would fall asleep that just, I don't ever want to be that deep in my psyche ever again. Those were scarier than realizing that I had a heart attack. Yeah. So, yeah.
So in that moment when you started to fully understand what had happened over the past week, what was ahead for you, what could be ahead for you, what were you feeling?
So I often tell people that when we talk about this, I think it's 7 stages of grief, whatever the stages of grief are, that's not just for loss of life. That's for any loss. So I finally leave ICU. I'm in the cardiac unit. I'm in the hospital bed. And I think what really that moment of, oh my God, what has happened and what is my life going to be, is when in the first maybe 3 or 4 days that I was in the hospital room, people who I did not know just started coming into the room. And these weren't like the nurses and the doctors at the hospital, just people. And some of them were coming in and just crying. Some of them were coming in and were just like overjoyed. And I was just like in my bed, still coming down off this medicine. And it's like, I remember I asked this guy, I said, I'm sorry, who are you? And he said, oh, well, I'm Dr. whatever his name was. He's like, I'm the doctor that saw you when they brought you to the first hospital. So the first hospital that they brought me to from my house, they moved me to a different hospital because the hospital where I actually stayed for 2 months had a very world-renowned, award-winning cardiac unit. The hospital where I was did not. So they moved me. And he said, well, I'm the doctor that saw you when you arrived at this hospital. And I said, okay. He said, and when we heard that you were still here, I immediately left work to come and see for myself. He said, you look amazing. And I'm thinking, no, I don't. And he said, no, I saw you when you were dying. He said, the fact that you are sitting up in the bed, alive, he said, there's nothing short of a miracle. The paramedics who brought me to the first hospital came to see me. Apparently word had gotten out. People had been, and I don't know how, and I always laugh. I was like, so I went viral. My heart attack went amongst the medical community. But literally, apparently I came in, I was so sick that all of the nurses, the paramedics, the doctors, everybody got word that I lived, and they all wanted to see for themselves. I had a widowmaker heart attack. So what that means is that the main artery in my heart was completely blocked. No blood flow. And so my heart essentially was shutting down. Then my organs were shutting down. And my heart stopped twice. My husband told me from in front of him. They were transporting me from one hospital. They were literally rolling me down the hallway, and they had to stop and revive me and do it again and stop. And then 7 more times before I got to the new hospital. So my heart stopped 9 times, and they couldn't figure out how to get my heart back beating regularly. Yeah. They told my husband, you need to call her parents she's not going to make it through the weekend. Get her affairs in order. She's not going to be here by Monday. Oh the prognosis is very bad. She's got about a 40% chance. And 3 other men, interestingly enough, came in the same night as I did with the exact same heart attack, and I'm the only one that survived. So it was a really serious. My husband thought that he was going to lose his wife. My daughter, who was an only child, thought that she was going to lose her mother. My parents, I'm their only child. My parents thought they were going to lose their only child. It was that serious. Yeah.
One thing that has stuck with me when you were talking about when you were coming to and you were realizing what was happening was that you said 3 other people came in and they're no longer alive.
Right.
And you are with the same kind of heart attack.
Same kind of heart attack, and they were men. And my cardiologist sat in my room one day once I was, fairly coherent and conscious. And when he told me that, and he said the reason why, he said a couple of things. He said, well, one of the reasons why you're here and they're not, he said, is your health. People think you have a heart attack that you had to have some kind of, like you weren't eating well, it's high blood pressure, it's cholesterol. And my doctor told me, he said, the reason why you're still here is because you were so healthy. The only thing that was wrong with your heart was that one blocked artery. And he said it wasn't because you had high cholesterol. It wasn't because you had high blood pressure. It wasn't because you had diabetes. None of those things were a factor. He said, and once we cleared the blockage in your artery, he said, your heart is perfect now. I live with lupus. And one of the things that I did not know was that when you have an autoimmune disease like lupus, you are, I think, 3 to 4 times more likely to end up with heart disease. So where I failed in my health was that I wasn't taking care and managing the lupus the way that I needed to. Because again, wife, mother, doing all the things, putting everybody, ahead of me, going to the doctor, getting medicine, getting things under control, and then just going right back to doing what I was doing. Years of doing that caused damage to my heart. But it wasn't because I was eating. I was a runner. I was training for the Peachtree Road Race. I used to run 5 miles every morning at 5 a.m. I was drinking. Yeah, my husband says the same thing. He's like, something's very wrong with you. I was, drinking 75 ounces to 85 ounces of water a day. I was eating the kale. I was doing all of the things that I knew to do to stay healthy, but because I wasn't managing the lupus the way that I needed to be managing it, that's what caused, that's what they think. They're still up in the air, but they believe that that's what caused the damage to my heart, and then that just put everything into motion. Yeah.
I mean, how does that make you feel? You're doing everything that they tell you to do. Eat healthy, move your body.
Yeah, I was doing all the things. And what I had to have what my grandmother would call a come to Jesus moment with myself, that while I was doing all of the physical things, I wasn't doing, no pun intended, I wasn't doing the heart work. I wasn't doing the self-care work. I wasn't getting enough sleep. I wasn't saying no. I was trying to do all of the things. And so anybody, I was everybody's go-to person. I was an educator at the time. I really wanted to move up in the education system. And so if you needed anything, I was your woman. You need me to do a workshop for parents on Saturday? Great. You need me to grade all of these papers because I got it. You need me to put this on. I was trying, and then I'm married to a pastor, so I was doing church stuff, and I'm a mom, and I'm trying to do mom stuff, and I'm a friend, and I'm doing friend stuff, and I was doing all of those things. And when my body would start, my primary care physician used to crack a joke and say, the only time you come see me is when your body's falling apart. And I would just be like, ha, 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 ha. Now give me what I need so I can. But he was right. Yeah. The only time I would cancel appointments because I had things I had to do. But I figured, hey, but I'm running. I'm getting my cardio in. I'm drinking my water. I'm eating my kale, so I'm good. Not thinking that I was doing almost irreparable damage to my heart because my symptoms with my lupus were manageable. I would have a flare every now and again. My joints may lock up a little bit. I may have a rash on my arm. I never got a rash on my face. Like there were all of these things when you think of lupus that I never experienced. So I just kept doing what I was doing until I couldn't anymore. But yeah, my cardiologist told me, he said, the men who passed away, he said, they had all kinds of health issues that you didn't have. He said, so even though it was really scary for a while, it was really scary. We thought we were going to lose you. He said, your physical fitness is one of the reasons why you're still here. He said, the other reason is clearly God has something for you to do. He said, because he said, I am a man of medicine. I'm also a man of faith. He said, if I was not already a man of faith, he said, you would be my first miracle. He said, because medically speaking, there is absolutely no reason for you to still be here. He said, everything that could have possibly gone wrong with your heart attack went wrong. I was bleeding out. They had no clue why I was bleeding out, where I was bleeding out from. They were giving me blood transfusions, and as fast as they were giving it to me, it was like on the floor. Like it was bad. My mother said that all she could think of was that she was going to watch her only child bleed out and die before her. They couldn't figure out. My cardiologist, to this day, I don't know what he said or what he told the person to do. He's like, do this, add this, do something. And it stopped. But he was very clear. He said, you're medically speaking, you're not supposed to be here. He said, I can only attribute the fact that you were here to the fact that God wasn't ready for you to go yet. He said, prayer is obviously what did it. He said, because we had done everything. And we literally, and it's interesting because if you look in my medical records, he wrote in my medical records, we've done all that we can do. God, it's up to you. It's in my medical records. He recorded that. And so, yeah, he said, you're still here. And there's a reason why you're still here. He said, and so now your purpose is to figure out what that reason is. He said, for the rest of your life, your job is going to do whatever it is that God has purposed you to do because you're still here. So figure out what that is. And here we are.
I mean, so have you figured it out? Do you know what direction you're going? Like, what?
That's boy, you're just getting all the questions today. And the reason why that's so interesting is because I literally had this moment with my husband a couple of days ago where I just was sitting on the sofa and I just started crying. And he's like, what's wrong? And I said, I don't know what it is that I don't think I know what it is that I'm supposed to be doing. And he said, what do you mean? And I said, well, I was in my quiet time and I heard God very clearly say, focus on the ministry, focus on ministry. And I was like, what does that mean? I don't know what that means. And I want to say that I've reached the point now where just this morning of just really embracing the fact that one of the things that I'm very good at is I'm a teacher. I tell people often that I'm a teacher by profession and by vocation. So teaching is what I do professionally, but I'm also called to teach. And so I think that my purpose for being here is to teach people about my story so that, especially women, so that they know the symptoms, so that women will start taking better care of themselves. And I'm going to say this, especially Black women. Mm-hmm. We are notorious for carrying the world on our shoulders and feeling like we have to. So I think part of my reason for being here is so that I can share my story, share my testimony, not just of what I didn't do, but what God did do for me in order for me to be at this point. So I get a lot of speaking engagements where people talk about, want me to talk about not just my story, but what is it that I did? Because I was 100% back on social media almost a year to the day that I had my heart attack and becoming an amputee. I gave myself my first photo shoot almost a year to the date that I had my heart attack. And people who did not know me would see me on social media and just assume that I had been an amputee or I had been partially paralyzed, I had been sick, like my whole life. And this was 2019. And I'll never forget, a woman said, so what is it like to live with this for so long? And I was like, this just happened last year. And literally that deer in headlights, like she stopped blinking and she said, what do you mean? It was only a year ago. I said, oh yeah, this just happened last year. She said, how are you here doing all of these things?
Right.
And I was like, well, that's a really good question. I don't know. And in my quiet time, because I get in my moment of faith, and I said, okay, God, what do I tell people? Like, what have I done? And because I'm a teacher, what ended up happening was I started, my students every so often would start reminding me of lessons that I had taught them. And then I realized that during the year that I was in recovery, all the lessons that I had taught them were the lessons that I was living. Like I was living out the things that I had been, telling them in class. We were talking about Shakespeare or something, and I would throw something out. And so I learned about resilience. I learned about what that means for me. I recaptured my faith. I tell this story just because I want to give honor to the person who gave it to me, and my Mama Dot. Mama Dot is Dr. Dorothy Arnold. She actually hired me when I started teaching in 2005, and she just came in my life and she just never left. And she was the only person that I would allow to come see me. Like my mother was there, and I want to give a shout out to my mom, because my mom, my dad, my husband, my daughter were just amazing during this time. My mother actually retired in December before I had my heart attack, and then she spent the first 14 months of her retirement taking care of me. And so she often tells me, she's like, you owe me 14 months of my retirement time. But Mama Dot was a person who would come and she would sit with me and she would pray with me. And she said, I want you to know that I told God that I was mad at him too, because how could you let this happen to my baby? And she said, God gave me this scripture to give to you. And I said, well, after you give me the scripture, get out my house, because God and I were not on speaking terms. This was not, everything that I had believed about God clearly was a lie, because how could this happen to me? But she gave me Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord, plans to prosper you, not harm you, to give you a future with hope. And I tell people that scripture saved my life, because she gave it to me. And I said, okay, God, if this is true, if this scripture is real, you're going to have to show me, because I don't believe you. My heart attack anniversary is March 23rd of this year. It'll have been 6 years. And if you had told me in 2018 that on February 19th, 2024, I would be doing a podcast interview talking about this story, I would have probably called you a liar. So I think that part of my purpose is to share this story, and not just because for people who have had heart attacks, but for anybody who's experienced anything difficult, anything life-changing. I'm a living witness that there is life after death. There's life after loss. Whatever that loss is, you lost your job, you lost your child, you lost your hope, you lost your marriage, you lost whatever it is that you lost. There's life after that, if you're willing to try and believe. So I think that's what my purpose is to share that with people.
That's amazing. Obviously, faith plays a huge role in keeping you moving, keeping you motivated. Yeah. Are there other things? Sorry, I just have to keep my head on a swivel with these cameras. Obviously, faith is huge.
Right.
Huge for you. Are there other parts of your life that keep you going?
Absolutely. My husband, of course, is one. He's my running buddy. So, and he's about as goofy as I am, although people see him and think he's very serious because he's a pastor. But he's a sneakerhead and he's a hip hop head. So we spend a lot of time talking about sneakers and good hip hop music. I'm not even going to get into that
right
now.
That could be a whole podcast.
That's a whole podcast right there. Because I grew up in the I grew up in the dawn of hip hop, but that's another thing.
We'll schedule that.
Okay, we'll talk about that later. My daughter will be 27 this year, and she really was my motivation when I wanted to quit. Everything that I ever had told her, she threw back at me. Everything, like to the point where I was just like, I don't even like you. She's like, that's fine. But all these lessons that you taught me, I'm now giving back to you. And so now I tell her all the time, I was like, you were not the boss of me. She's like, yes, I am. I don't know why you don't know that. So my daughter, my husband, my 2 granddaughters, who actually live in Atlanta, although they're from Savannah, so I see them, and they are just every bit of all of the energy that you could possibly want or need to have. And I just love them. My sorority sisters, I'm a member of Delta Sigma Theta, and my line sisters, woo, they held me up. And I'm an only child. So that was all very new to me, to just sort of have these people just embrace me. So I do that. I'm also a writer, so I write. I create content on social media just because it's fun. It's something to do. But sometimes that is sometimes the way that I decompress. I share my story. I never thought that I would be the person who would be living their whole life in public. But what I realize is that part of the reason that I continue going on is because there are people who follow me and look to me and think I'm funny. God bless them. Or they appreciate my humor. So doing things like that, and I discovered that content creation actually brings me joy. It helps me to relax, to kind of create short form. Just let me throw this video on YouTube right quick. Let me come on here and talk about this. I tell people that I speak in memes. Memes are funny to me, so I'm always creating a meme about something to make, I'm a little quirky.
Yeah.
But yeah, just like I said, I'm a big kid, so I watch cartoons.
Yeah.
I'm also a huge Marvel fan. Like I was a Marvel fan. I used to collect the comic books. So this is before the MCU. But then the MCU came out, and I've watched every single Marvel movie at least 3 times. In correct chronological order, not the order that they came out, but the chronological order in the MCU. So
we got like a couple of podcasts.
Yeah, because that's important. That's important. So I do things like that. I read. I nap. Napping is so underrated.
I love that that's on the list.
Nap, just in the middle of the day. And because I work from home, I'll take a lunch. I'll take my hour. I grab my blanket and go down and sleep. It's a beautiful thing. Napping, y'all need to get into this napping thing.
What's the key to a really good nap? Like, what's the key? For
me, the key to a really good nap is making sure that it's not too long. Because there's a fine line between napping and sleeping.
Yeah.
And then if I nap too long, then I can't sleep at night. So for me, somewhere between like 30, 45 minutes, get my favorite blanket.
Gotcha.
Get on the sofa. It's even better if it's, I've got the fan going and the sun's coming in.
It's the timing.
And just, and I just kind of, I maybe put on my rain sounds and I just turn everything off. And and then I can get back up and do what I need to do. It's refreshing.
Yeah.
I'm a big proponent of nap. Get you a good nap.
Yes. You said turn everything off. Have you become more protective of boundaries now?
Oh my God, yes. No is a complete sentence.
Yeah.
I tell people that all the time. I said, and it doesn't require an explanation at all. Can you do this? No. Thank you. Now, 2017, Chantrise? Sure. What do you need? I got it. No, not anymore. One of the things that I realized is that I was putting any and everything and everybody before me.
Yeah.
And people knew that they could come to me last minute, whenever, and that I was going to say yes. Now, I am very particular about what I say yes to. there has to be a really good reason, or I have to have a really good feeling. When you asked me to do this, it wasn't even, I was like, oh, absolutely. And I thought, I was like, okay, wait. No, I want to do this. This is good. This is good. Because we met, in studio, and I was like, and I even told my husband, I was like, I really like her. I would love to do her podcast. So my boundaries are absolutely more secure than they were. And also learning not to feel guilty about saying no. Because I think a lot of times we say, well, then I feel bad. Because what if they'll be fine. The world's not going to end if I can't do this. And so I've learned to give myself grace. Yeah. It's okay for you to say no, Chantrise. You don't have to do it. And that even goes with for my husband. Like I said, my husband is a pastor of St. Philip AME Church here in Savannah on MLK Boulevard. And there are times when, he'll go places and the expectation is that as his wife, that I'm going to be there. And he'll just say, hey, I got to go do this. I'm like, okay, I'll see you. Let me know how it goes. And he's like, so you're not coming? No. And now he's become a protector of my boundary. People say, well, your wife didn't come. He's like, yeah, no, today's her rest day. And I'm sure she'll reach out to you or she'll be there. So now he's helping me to kind of, keep the boundaries and tell people, she's not doing all of the things. And I think that's so important, especially for me, someone who is a giver by nature. Yeah. And there's this meme that's going around and say, make sure that you have boundaries as a giver because takers don't have any. People who are willing to push until they get what they want because they know you're going to say yes. I've had quite a few people come up on a brick wall. They're like, well, before, that was old me. Not doing it anymore. Yeah. Or I'll let you know when I'm in a space. Right. When I can do that. But yeah, boundaries are super important to me now.
Absolutely. So part of sharing your testimony goes even further this year because you are a part of the 2024 Go Red for Women class of survivors with the American Heart Association. So tell me a little bit about what that means.
Okay. So first of all, let me just say that I had no idea that this was even a thing. Yeah. It was a friend of mine. The application or the information came across her email one day. She texted me. She said, hey, I really think you need to do this. And I was just like, okay, when's the deadline? She's like, oh, it's today. Okay. And I said, okay. So I created this little video. I filled out the application. And I said, okay, really didn't think anything of it. Fast forward to about 3 weeks later, they said, hey, we want to interview you. Had an interview, went well, didn't think anything else of it. A couple of weeks later, got a phone call and they were just like, hey, we have a couple of more questions. Can we talk to you really briefly? I was like, sure. And they said, if our first question is, how does it feel to know that you've been chosen to be part of the 2024 Survivor Class of Women? I was like, wait, what? I did this at the last minute. I wasn't expecting this to be anything that I was doing, but boy, has it been an amazing experience. Even, we're only 3 weeks into February. Yeah. But it has been an amazing experience, not just because of all of the fun stuff, like going to the Red Dress Gala and meeting Yvonne Orji, which was amazing, and doing all of these things, but just I am part of a group of women. So there are 11 other women who are heart attack and or stroke survivors. And to be in this group, to know that you're not the only one and to hear their survivor stories and to just know that, wow, we're all here, for a reason, to raise awareness. And so for somebody who really prefers to be in the background, for somebody who used to be terrified to speak in public, to be in this space now where my story can help save lives is just mind-boggling to me. So yeah, it's been a wonderful experience. I have 11 new sisters. So
your village has grown.
My sibling group has grown. But just to be able to be on platforms that I never thought. I was on the Today Show. I grew up watching the Today Show. So to be on set and to be like, but I'm here, and to be on national television, sharing my story. So some woman could hear and be like, you know what, let me make my doctor's appointment. And literally the day that I flew back from New York, a woman was in the airport. I was on the phone talking to my mother, and she walked by and she said, I saw you this morning on the Today Show. And I got off the phone. I said, you did? She's like, I did. And I saw you, and I immediately called my cardiologist to make my appointment. She said, I kept putting it off and putting it off, but I saw your story. And I said, let me make this phone call right now. And she did. And so, so just to think that my story, my survivor story is helping somebody else be there for their family, for their loved ones. It's just, it's amazing, but it's also humbling that God would use my story to save someone else's life.
Yeah.
That's just huge to me.
Yeah. At the start of this, I asked you, who is Dr. Holliman? So what do you want people to know about Dr. Holliman?
I want people to know that I'm just a regular woman. I'm just a regular person, just like you. There's nothing, people will say that there are extraordinary things about me, but I just like, no, I don't think that I'm extraordinary. I think I was presented with an extraordinary circumstance. I think I've been presented with an extraordinary opportunity, but I'm just a regular wife, mother, sister, friend. And I say that because I want people to know that my situation is not unique. If it can happen to me, it can happen to anybody. And I want you to do better than what I did. I want you to take better care of yourself. I want you to be more conscious. I want you to put yourself first. It's okay to love on and take care of all of the other people in your life. But I think I want people to know that Dr. Chantrise Sims Holliman is someone who has learned to take care of herself first. And I shared this quote. One of my really good friends' mother passed away a couple of years ago. And one of the most beautiful things that I've ever heard anybody say about somebody is this. Her name was Mama Fern. And they said that Mama Fern learned to love herself better so that she could love others more. And that is now how I live my life. Taking care of myself better allows me to do the things that I want to do and be there for the people that I love and love others and love others more. So Dr. Holliman, Dr. Chantrise, Holly Pop, which is what my students call me, is somebody who has learned to love herself better so that she can love other people more.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your story today.
Thank you for having me.